He was the town's poorest cowboy, a man running from a past mistake. The horse was the ranch's most dangerous beast, a creature no one could tame. When the town's richest man made them an impossible wager, no one expected the two broken spirits to find redemption in each other. The Dust Valley Summer Rodeo was the heartbeat of the territory. For 3 days every year, the quiet, sun-baked town transformed into a vibrant tapestry of noise and color. On this Saturday afternoon, the wooden bleachers groaned under the weight of families who had traveled for miles, their faces flushed with sun and excitement. At the center of it all, moving through the crowd with an air of absolute ownership, was Mr. Sterling. He was the master of Dust Valley Ranch, a man whose wealth was matched only by his arrogance. His tailored vest of deep maroon silk, boots polished until they reflected the sun, and a hat, as white and spotless as the clouds above, set him apart, a king in his dusty court. He laughed, a sharp, cutting sound that rose above the music, a sound that reminded everyone in the valley that they owed him something: wages, debt, or a grudge. On the far edge of the bleachers, almost hidden in the shadows of the last row, sat Wyatt. His faded checkered shirt, worn at the elbows, jeans with patches, and boots whose leather had long lost its shine marked him as a man who lived by the season, a drifter. Whispers followed him. A hard worker, some would concede, but just a drifter. Ain't got more than a dime to his name. Others would chuckle, their voices laced with the casual cruelty reserved for those at the bottom rung. Wyatt heard, but he didn't turn. His gaze, steady and brown, was fixed on a smaller enclosure near the main arena, its wooden bars reinforced with crude iron straps. Inside, pacing like a storm trapped in a bottle, was Fury. The stallion was a sight both terrible and magnificent. A giant of black muscle, his coat absorbing the sunlight, his eyes burning with a reddish, defiant glint. He struck the gate with his hooves, the clang of iron, a delineation of war against the world. Everyone in Dust Valley knew the stories. Men had tried to mount Fury, strong men, proud riders with reputations forged in fire. All had been thrown, some leaving with broken bones, all leaving with broken pride. The horse was not just wild, he was vindictive. They said he remembered faces, held grudges, and would sooner kill than be mastered. The band struck up a louder tune as Sterling stepped into the center of the arena, his voice booming with pride and whiskey. Ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate the cowboy spirit. Applause roared. But then, he turned, his fingers stretching out like a spear, aimed straight at the dark, quiet figure in the back row. You there, Wyatt, you call yourself a horseman? Let's see you even touch that beast. He jabbed his thumb toward Fury's enclosure, where the horse reared and slammed against the bars in response. If you can lay a hand on him, Sterling declared, his voice dripping with mockery, I'll give you Dust Valley Ranch itself. A heartbeat of silence, then the crowd exploded with laughter. The idea was absurd. From the shaded box seats, Sterling's wife, Eleanor, pressed her lips together, a silent, weary disapproval in her eyes. Beside her, their daughter, Abigail, leaned forward, her young face alight not with mockery, but with a keen, searching curiosity. All eyes turned to Wyatt. Instead of walking away, he rose. He walked down the steps of the bleachers with a steady, unhurried rhythm, his worn boots kicking up dust. He did not look at Sterling. His eyes were only on the horse. As he looked at Fury, Wyatt wasn't just seeing a wild horse. He was seeing a ghost. A memory, sharp as glass, cut through him. Another horse, a beautiful young mare, named Starlight, 10 years ago. He had been young, arrogant, desperate to prove himself. Working for a man just like Sterling, he had been pressured to break Starlight in a week for a high-stakes sale. When she resisted, her spirit too proud to be broken by force, he had lost his patience. In a moment of frustration, he had used sharp spurs and a cruel bit, methods he had sworn never to use. He had broken her, yes, but not her back. He had broken her spirit. The fire in her eyes had died that day, replaced by a dull, empty fear that haunted him still. He had won the bonus money, but the shame of that act, the memory of that dead-eyed horse, had become the brand on his own soul. It was the reason he drifted, the reason he never stayed, the reason he now only worked with his hands, never again with force. The loudspeaker crackled. "Step forward, Wyatt. Time to prove yourself." Wyatt didn't flinch. He removed his hat, ran a calloused hand through his dusty hair, and placed it firmly back on his head. He set his jaw. The sunlight caught his eyes, and for the first time, the crowd noticed what lay in them. It wasn't bravado or madness. It was a resolve so deep and quiet it seemed to absorb all the noise around it. He walked toward the gate of the pen. The gate creaked open with a long, rusty groan. Wyatt stepped across the threshold with nothing in his hands. No whip, no rope, no lariat slung over his shoulder. A ripple of disbelief swept through the crowd. "He's walking in there with nothing," someone hissed. "Suicide," muttered a weathered rancher in the back, spitting a stream of tobacco juice. Fury exploded into motion, ears flat, hooves pounding against the packed dirt like thunder. He charged, not at Wyatt, but at the fence, crashing his powerful body against the wood as if to show the futility of his prison. He reared, his massive hooves carving the air, and screamed a challenge that rattled spines all across the stands. But Wyatt did nothing. He planted his boots firmly in the dirt and stood still, a quiet island in the center of the horse's storm. He turned slowly, pivoting on his heels to follow the stallion's arc, never letting him slip out of sight, never breaking the strange, calm thread of his presence. Then, he did something no one expected. He stepped back, not forward, back. 3 slow, deliberate paces, boots scuffing the dust, his hands open and visible at his sides. Gasps swept through the stands. To most, it looked like surrender. To Sterling, it looked like a coward's humiliation. But Hank Miller, the ranch's longtime foreman, his eyes sharp beneath a lifetime of wrinkles, allowed the faintest of smiles to touch his lips. "He's not retreating," he murmured to himself. "He's inviting." Fury froze mid-stride, his massive chest heaving as he stared at the cowboy who had broken the script of violence. The stallion stamped once, twice, his ears twitching with a confusion that momentarily overrode his rage. Wyatt lowered his head slightly, not in fear, but in a gesture of profound respect. His body spoke what his voice did not. "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to see you." The moment was shattered by Sterling's impatient roar. 14 days, he bellowed, his face red with impatience. 2 weeks to ride that devil in front of the whole town. If you succeed, half the ranch is yours. If you fail, you leave this valley forever. Wyatt didn't hesitate. He lifted his chin, his voice steady and clear. "I accept." In the days that followed, Wyatt became a permanent fixture beside Fury's pen. He built a small, makeshift shelter, living beside the horse, allowing the stallion to grow accustomed to the quiet rhythm of his breathing, the smell of his campfire, the very fact of his existence. He spent hours each day just sitting on an overturned bucket outside the rails, watching and listening. He noted the way the stallion tore at his hay, impatient, then suddenly pausing to stare into the distance. He memorized the twitch of muscle, the flick of an ear, and he confirmed his initial observation from the ring. The subtle, almost invisible limp in the horse's left shoulder, the way it flinched when turning. This wasn't just rage, this was agony. One evening, as the sunset painted the fields in blood-red light, Abigail approached his camp. She carried not food, but a small, worn, leather-bound journal. "This was my grandmother's," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper, as if sharing a sacred secret. "Before my father took over, she ran this ranch. She believed trust was a conversation, not a conquest. My father," he called her, methods sentimental and foolish. She opened the journal to a page marked with a dried prairie rose. It detailed herbal poultices for muscle injuries and inflammation, remedies passed down through generations. "I saw the way he moves," she said, looking at Fury. "The way he protects his left side. This might help." The gesture was more than just kindness. It was an act of quiet rebellion, an alliance. Abigail recognized in Wyatt the same philosophy her grandmother had championed, a philosophy her father had brutally suppressed in his quest for profit and power. From that day on, she became a silent partner in his crusade. She would bring him the herbs from the journal, a flask of hot coffee on cold mornings, and they would talk in low voices, not just about the horse, but about a better, gentler way of living with them. When the dark settled over Dust Valley, Wyatt would sit cross-legged by the pen and play a small wooden flute. It had been his mother's, a keepsake from a life long gone. The first notes were rough, but they carried a slow, patient melody. At first, Fury fought the sound, snorting and pacing. But night after night, as the gentle music wound through the stillness, the stallion's fury began to soften. His ears would twitch. His eyes would lose some of their wild fire. He would stand for hours, a magnificent black statue, simply listening. The horse that no man could approach was now willingly standing in the presence of the whispering cowboy. The breakthrough came on the 9th day. Wyatt, using a technique from the journal, had prepared a warm, fragrant poultice. He entered the pen, humming the now familiar tune from his flute. Fury snorted, but stood his ground, a tense but waiting presence. "I know it hurts," Wyatt murmured, his voice a low, calming rumble. "Let me carry some of that pain for you." He reached out a slow, deliberate hand. It pressed lightly against the scarred, knotted muscle of the horse's shoulder. The horse quivered, a tremor running through its entire body. But it did not strike. For the first time, a human hand lay upon his wound without violence. The crowd that had gathered at the fence fell into a stunned, breathless silence. Abigail, watching from her usual spot, pressed a hand to her lips, tears of hope shining in her eyes. The story swept through Dust Valley. The devil horse had allowed him to touch it. But this success only deepened Sterling's fury, a cold, calculating rage. His public humiliation was becoming unbearable. He called for his most ruthless henchman, a man named Eduardo. "That cowboy cannot succeed," Sterling snarled in the privacy of his office. "Accidents happen around horses. See to it." The night was dark, moonless. Eduardo crept toward the pen, a sharp knife in his hand. The plan was simple. Cut the gate rope. Set Fury loose into the desert. No horse, no challenge, no humiliation. But he wasn't alone. Hank Miller, the old foreman who saw a younger, better version of himself in Wyatt, had been watching. "Drop it," Hank's voice split the night like thunder. A tense standoff ensued, broken by the arrival of other ranch hands drawn by the shouting. Eduardo, exposed and cornered, was revealed as a cheat, and by extension, so was his master. The sabotage attempt backfired spectacularly. By dawn, the entire valley knew that Sterling had tried to cheat. His power, built on fear and a reputation for unbending strength, crumbled overnight. He was no longer a feared patriarch. He was a dishonorable coward. The day of the final ride arrived. The rodeo grounds were packed, the air electric with a tension different from the first day. This was no longer a spectacle for blood. It was a trial of honor. Wyatt led Fury into the arena. He placed an old saddle blanket on the horse's back. Then the saddle, his movements a slow, patient dance he had practiced for days. He mounted, and the crowd held its collective breath. With a gentle squeeze of his heels, they launched forward. What the crowd witnessed was not a violent battle. It was poetry. It was a dance. Man and horse, two spirits once broken by force and failure, now moved as one. Fury exploded into the arena, not with panicked fury, but with a controlled, magnificent power. He bucked, he spun, he soared. His movements, a breathtaking display of raw, wild freedom that had been healed, not broken. and on his back, Wyatt was a part of him, moving in perfect harmony, his body a perfect extension of the animal's will. There was no fear between them. There was only a profound, absolute trust. For 8 glorious, heart-stopping seconds, they held the world captive. When the buzzer sounded, the crowd erupted in a deafening roar. They had not just seen a rodeo ride. They had witnessed a miracle. Wyatt, the broken-down failure, was a champion once more. But as he slid from the horse's back, his gaze swept past the cheering crowd, past the stunned and defeated face of Sterling, and found Abigail. She was standing by the fence, tears of joy streaming down her face. The real victory was in her eyes. He walked towards her, and in the center of the dusty arena, surrounded by the roar of the crowd, he finally tamed the ghosts of his own past. The aftermath was swift. Faced with public condemnation and the unshakable word of the town lawyer, Sterling was forced to sign over half the ranch. His wife, Eleanor, in a final, quiet act of defiance, announced she would be staying on the half that now belonged to Wyatt, to help run it the way my mother would have wanted. The following week, Wyatt erected a new sign at the gate. It didn't say, Wyatt's Ranch. It said, the Starlight Academy, named for the horse whose spirit he had broken so long ago. He stood before the townsfolk who had gathered, his voice steady and clear. I once believed a horse's spirit had to be broken to be useful, he said, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. I was young, and I was a fool. I broke a good horse's spirit with force, and I have carried that shame for 10 years. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. This place will not be a place of breaking. It will be a place of building, of listening, of healing, for horses and for men like me who have a debt to repay. And in that moment, the cowboy who had come to town with nothing but a past he was running from, finally found his future. He wasn't just a champion again. He was a teacher, a healer. And he was, at long last, home.